There's no direct evidence linking him other than that transferred DNA on the sheath. The idea, as I stated already, isn't complete 100%. Oh, it's Bryan Kohberger. The white Elantra can't be determined to be his white Elantra. I mean, there's circumstantial evidence indicating that it could potentially be his white Elantra, but there's certainly not direct evidence. They don't have direct evidence that he's driving the white Elantra. They're using cell phone pings, which we all know as defense attorneys aren't GPS location coordinates. If it was GPS location coordinates, you're talking down to a meter as to where Bryan Kohberger was at the time of these crimes. Whereas a cell phone tower ping is that you're within a radius of that tower up to 20 miles. And obviously, Mr. Kohberger lived within 10 miles of the University of Idaho where these crimes were committed. So certainly he could ping at any moment in time near the actual crime. It's a strong circumstantial case, but the evidence, when it's viewed individually, you can attack that evidence as a defense attorney. Now, again, we're just in the infancy of the case, so much of this evidence is actually going to come after the preliminary hearing time. Although we don't know now with this 5-month delay what's going to be available. But if you take the DNA evidence that's recovered from the sheath, for instance, I believe that to potentially be touch DNA, transferred DNA, which would mean that it could remain on that sheath for an indefinite period of time if undisturbed. That's one way of attacking that type of evidence that doesn't put him at the scene of the crime the night of, just that he merely touched that sheath at some point in time. The ID by DM is obviously going to be contested at the time of the preliminary hearing. I don't believe hearsay is admissible in Idaho under the rules, so it would be likely that DM is going to testify at the preliminary hearing when it gets to that point. So cross-examination of her is going to be key in the case to possibly get even more holes as far as the identification is concerned.
The affidavit only presents one side of the story. It's only the prosecution's version. You have to begin to develop your own evidence. And I'm going to surprise people when I say that a good criminal defense lawyer always starts with a presumption of guilt, not a presumption of innocence. You always assume your client is guilty, and then you work back from there. If you assume your client is innocent, you'll make mistakes. You'll allow searches. You'll allow him to speak to the police. So you always start with a presumption of guilt and then try to develop evidence that questions or challenges. And you always keep in mind the possibility of a plea bargain. This is difficult in a case like this where there were so many deaths and so brutal. So that, the lawyers, whoever they are, really have their work cut out for them.
I guess according to Dershowitz, I'm not a good defense attorney. Every defense attorney does it differently. I don't buy into that. I think I maybe do something a little similar. I go with the presumption of innocence, but the prosecution's case is the strongest thing against him. And I think if you look at it that way, we're saying, hey, I believe my guy is innocent, and I'm just talking about cases where I know I got to go to trial. I'm not talking about negotiating pleas, but if it's a trial case, I go with the assumption that my client is innocent, but the prosecution has the strongest case in the world. And if you go with that mindset, you fight a little bit harder to try to disprove their case. Of course, if you can't disprove their case, then you're looking to try to negotiate. But in a case like this, if you presume that your client is guilty, I don't think you're going to be working as hard. But I understand what he's saying. You got to really attack the prosecution's case, thinking that it is stronger than anything else that you can see.
If we're going to cover this wall to wall, then let's be fair about this. There's a probable cause warrant or affidavit for a warrant that is uncross-examined, that has got holes that you could drive a Mack truck through, and I've listened to 20 minutes assuming that this is the guy. And there's a reason that in England they have the Contempt of Court Act, because when they bring over tabloidization over here, Fox News and Murdoch and everybody else, at least in England, when the person is accused and is starting the proceedings, they shut down the media. And there's a good reason for that, because this has been absolutely incomprehensible to me. I mean, if you want to know the truth, Chris, the father of the poor woman who's dead had more reserve, had more kind of compassion and understanding of the system than what I'm watching. It's really disturbing.
What is disturbing you exactly? What is different
What's
on the
disturbing
strength of
when
this?
you?
I know how you would defend him, Mark, but hold on. First of all, you know, tone is not always the same thing as tenacity. What I'm saying is, given the strength of the affidavit that they put forward, you think that there's any reasonable basis to question this arrest?
No, but I think there's a reasonable
let's start with
basis
that,
to
because
not
that's the same
assume
place I
guilt.
am. Could he beat the case?
No, because
of course.
listen to
of course
what
he could
you
beat the
said.
case.
Listen to what you said.
Please.
If there's probable cause, that's not guilt.
I didn't say it was.
Probable cause. Well, I invite you to roll back the tape and take a listen, because I sat and listened intently.
I think you listened for what you wanted to hear, which was the disposition of a criminal defense attorney and how they'd feel about what's being put out there. And I respect your emotion.
That's actually an argument. That's a fallacy. That's an ad hominem to say criminal defense attorney, as if that diminishes the point. The point is when you say, I'm just making a point
that the public defender is going to make.
So I think the strongest and probably the only option here is it wasn't him. I mean, today everyone is applauding the police and their investigation and the capture of Bryan Kohberger, but don't forget, a week ago, the court of public opinion thought they were botching this investigation. I can imagine a defense attorney jumping on that and saying, hey, what we all thought at the beginning of this investigation is true, and here are all the different reasons why it's not Bryan Kohberger, why it's this person or that person. Don't forget, even Terry was saying, why are the police letting so many people go so quickly? A defense attorney, I think, is going to jump on that rather than trying to make the argument that, hey, it was him, but because of some sort of mental break, he doesn't have the mens rea or the mental capacity to commit the crime. That dog, I don't think is going to hunt.
And we need to see what the evidence is, right? We need to understand at least what's in the probable cause affidavit, because right now a lot of it is based on speculation. Once we have a better understanding, then we can start talking about a legal case.
The statement of him being exonerated implicitly meant that he was innocent of the crimes. He used the word exonerated. That's why we put that in the statement. He wanted me to reach out to family, stay in contact with family, which I did to keep them abreast of the situation. Really, he was just aware and willing to cooperate with me. I didn't have too many issues speaking with him, if any at all. He was obviously, as you said, intelligent, PhD student.
Hey, what's good? Welcome to the channel. I'm Arrhythmia, and I'm your boy out here in these true crime gutters, these true crime trenches. This is the gutter of true crime. I'm not going to ask you to like these videos or to subscribe to the channel. Surely you can make those calls on your own, but I would like to know what you think about Bryan. Do you think he could be exonerated from these charges or not? Let me know in the comments below before I come back later with another video.